All right. You want to talk about Faker's injury? Because that's
Yeah.
probably the hottest topic this morning. Well, this afternoon,
Even though
I
it
guess,
hasn't
your
come
time.
out yet, you're already loving that in competitive edge. You already, before it was official, did make a bet against T1. Like, you've already nailed that one. It's in the bank now. You did it.
I got Gen G at 1.5. Let's go.
Now it's like twice as likely they win in it.
Yeah. You know what's funny is we're going to talk about this, but because I just woke up and the games happened overnight, I actually haven't seen DRX versus T1 yet, but they did get clapped 2-0, and they did have to run Poby in the mid lane. And Wolf and I talked about on the Monte Wolf show about the possibility that this might happen. And it looked like Carrier's been playing mid lane in solo queue, so I don't think they're going to stick with Poby in the mid lane.
Oh, people
Problem,
don't know. Apparently, yeah, Kerry is supposed to be one of those guys, a la people like Mad Life, that actually have the mechanics where they used to play mid or whatever as like an off roll and they can actually do it, supposedly. Hence why they're so cracked at support, right?
yeah. I mean, he certainly has the mechanical abilities, right? I think that's what
Sure.
made Carrier unique.
And I'm
But
guessing it's a good shot calling role because of what Faker did and all that crap, you know?
right. The thing is that the mid laners from the T1 Challengers team. So you guys can go listen to Wolf's extended opinion about this because he actually casts LCK Challengers in addition to LCK, so he knows quite a bit about these teams. But they are just really quite bad. Apparently, I am not a Challengers watcher, but they're the second worst team in the league by record. He said the mid laners are really underwhelming, so there really wasn't a good backup for Faker, and so
I mean,
that's
spoiler,
why
they just lost to DRX, who's absolute garbage. They're not
They're-
even vaguely good.
DRX has gotten better since
That's
they
saying a
put
lot.
Juhan in. They've gotten better.
They're not good, though, are they? They're not going to be in the
Uh,
playoffs, Monty.
No, they certainly aren't 19-2 kills over T1 good, which is what happened in the first game, and 18-6. And honestly, like, we talked about this too on Competitive Edge, which is over on the Esports Bet YouTube channel that Thorin and I do, which is like
I don't think it's
very
up
good
yet, but in
advice.
theory, it
Turns
will be
out
out
we've
soon.
yeah, it should be out soon, but yeah, you really want to go check that out, because if you are making wagers on these matches, we basically called that this was probably going to happen. Either Faker was going to play poorly, or that there might be a substitute happening
Style
from
would
the
fall
challenger
apart without
roster.
Faker's calling and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that the team really does rely on Faker's shot calling, and particularly his style, because it's his style of propping up his lanes and playing this selfless kind of mid that enables his teammates. And so in the absence of that, if you have a more traditional mid laner, it can become really quite difficult to play the game, because you're losing effectively your whole identity when you lose Faker from this roster. It's not a plug and play. Like, you could take Gumayusi out of this team and replace him, and the team would probably be worse if you replaced him, but they wouldn't be completely wrecked from the inside, like if you took Faker or potentially Carry out of this roster. So it does look rather grim right now for T1, especially because they're playing Gen G later this week. The
I mean, I'll
upside,
give you an obvious angle, Monty. Here's the real question this makes me ask. I've thought this the whole time. I agree that T1 found an amazing crop of rookies and trained them up and got them to a world-class level. But here's the real reason why it's never been a true shock to me that T1's lost so many big international finals. Dude, the style and the Faker shot calling seem to be like half of the fucking team. Like, this team, these games are going to prove it to you. If Zeus and Gumayusi are monsters, then show me them just carrying. Just show me. You've got a god tier top laner. Have him beat the shit out of Rajcula. Now have Gumayusi just play a normal protect the ADC comp. Have him carry the game. I don't think you're going to see it that often. I've never thought these players were on the level. I mean, Zeus I did think was very good at one point in time, but Gumayusi for me has never even been close to the ruler sort of like elite category, you know. Viper's always been eye test wise. That guy on any team, you plug him in, mate, he just starts killing. He just starts doing his shit. Gumayusi looks like a product of the T1 system, you know. And unfortunately, if the system isn't there, I think some of these players are going to flounder. They're not going to be bad, but they're going to flounder. They're not going to be these world-class talents game in and game out.
yeah, I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were in this kind of like very surprising sub out of Faker, because they'll figure out some. I mean, they're good players and they're going to figure out some level of synergy. They still shouldn't be losing to the DRXs of the world. But we'll see. I mean, they are definitely going to be worse, and it is going to expose some of these players in terms of their value. And, honestly, in the history of T1, that's more or less been true of many of Faker's teammates who have left the roster, particularly junglers. Like, how many junglers have been on T1 that have departed T1 that have looked significantly worse in the rest of their career.
In my opinion, everyone has. Who's ever looked better? Marin looked way worse. Bang looked like shit in NA. He just looked like an average. The joke was when he arrived, I was like, why is this player imported? He just looks like a normal, just good NA player playing ADC. Same with Bengi, same with fucking Easy, who magically Easy, who wasn't a guy who could have won LCK on his own when he went to the LPL. He was just some above average Korean mid lane who plays majors. Like every player, as far as I can tell, like whoever was better who left T1. Can I have that answer? The only joke is the ones they didn't play, like Scout, who never was a proper player. He turned out to be amazing, but that was just a guy they probably actually should have groomed to be Faker's replacement. He should have played support or something, you know.
Yeah,
go back in time now.
Yeah, Scout is definitely. I mean, he's coming off an MVP performance in the LPL, so yeah. I mean, Scout
champion.
Sky world champion. True. Scout is definitely way up there, but he also didn't have a lot of starting time, as you say.
Barely played, like I said. To me, it doesn't even count on that one.
I mean, the argument, this is preemptive. The argument could be Cuz, depending on if he can actually keep up this form for the rest of the year and have like a real run at international play, because Cuz is playing quite well at the moment. But again, I'm wary of that just based on Cuz's history and the fact that he has been able to play like a really narrow pool of jungle champions. And also he's getting a lot of help from BDD playing like roaming mid laners. And his side lanes,
even when
his side lanes are really strong.
Even when he was on that like fucking Longdew team that won LCK, he was always the fucking weak point of the team. It was the guy that you know the mental's just going to go at some point, which for a jungler is terrible.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there are quite a few of these players, and you know, I think some people might say Peanut, but you have to remember that Peanut didn't start on T1. He was an acquisition.
Peanut's peak was Rock's Tigers, bro.
Yeah,
that was when he was like the best jungler in the world or whatever.
I mean, you could make arguments that he was winning title. I mean, he's won 2 titles on Gen G now, right? So he's had some certainly good times, especially
the thing though, mate. This part of his career, like you say, is that he's the role player now. Before people forget, like a lot of great supports and jungles, he was the stud. He was the guy where, if you remember when they used to not have Peanut, they were like, it was like Smeb and Bang have to just carry the fucking game. Then when they got Peanut, it's like, no, we've got a Lee Sin who just fucking pops off in the game and carries and can play niddly and shit. Like, that was the game changer. That's why, sadly, that's why the greatest series ever probably is that semi-final, Rocks Tigers SKT. Because if Rocks Tigers wins that and they won, they were second in spring, they win the fucking summer, and then they win Worlds, they actually would be hailed as they should be as one of the best teams ever. That was their year. That should have been their year. Really was.
Yeah.
Sadly, that bullshit with Bengi happened, didn't it? He stole another fucking one, didn't he? And he could. His thing, unlike Brady, he couldn't keep getting away with it forever. But whatever.
So yeah, I think it is a testament to fate. One of the things that I like about what's going to happen right now is we are going to reevaluate Faker's value as a player and his career as a result of this, because depending on how long he's out, we're going to get some extremely valuable data about how useful he is to his team and how much of a central pillar he is in terms of their play style. And if they continue to lose, it's going to make Faker look fucking amazing. Because we'll see what, you know, it's one of those rare experiments that you don't get to get very often, which is like, you just remove the star player. All the teammates are still there. They're 4/5 of the team. Can they still have a decent performance? And if the answer is they're just going to get slapped by the bottom of the barrel teams in the LCK, holy moly, that's going to say great things about Faker.
I never got round to making this video, but I do have the thumbnail. It is something I can do anytime. But ages ago, it was now like 3 or 4 years ago, Monty, there was that video that Apto did on his stream where, because he decided to retire from streaming and he wasn't going to do it anymore, he just revealed his core philosophy on how League of Legends works. And not only was it complete genius, and he was actually the genius anime prodigy who should have been a top player and one of the best ever, but it turned out Faker was doing it and understood the principle, Monty. Essentially, the concept was called attention bandwidth. And what he realized was this. What Faker was doing in mid lane is he understood that every player only has a certain amount of bandwidth of attention they can have. So the enemy mid laner is thinking about the wave, about the matchup, about Faker's place. So what Faker would do is he would use like preemptive moves when the jungler wasn't there to shield himself by making it look like he was threatening the jungler to come for a gank. Then he'd do like a similar thing later, but as a feint, and the jungler was there, and suddenly Bengi would get the kill off. Now, what's hilarious is once Abdor explained this, you see it completely, and you're like, oh shit, that's what Faker was doing. It wasn't just like he was trying to win lane. He wasn't just being supportive. He was actually playing with this concept to make the enemies make mistakes or not be able to think 2 steps in advance. And what it basically showed was one thing. It was so validating that I have always thought, which is, everyone was like, they almost got it with the nickname. They were this close. Remember Bengi's nickname, the right hand of God? You morons thought he was like God, the fucking part 2. He was the right hand. What happened was Faker was like, come in, go out. Like Faker was just telling him what to do, you fucking idiots. He was the one microing this fucker. That's why that guy was just whacking times when Faker wasn't that good or the team wasn't that good or he went elsewhere. Like he didn't have it. He didn't have the secret sauce that Score and Dandy and these guys did. So to me, that was like, that amazing concept really stuck with me because it's why I think Faker's had this extended career now. Because if we're going on raw skills, beyond a few games in spring, dude, Faker hasn't been him for legit 6 or 7 years now. A long, long time. If we put him in some sort of aim lab testing thing, Monty, he wouldn't be at the level of some of the elite mid laners. Even people that everyone scoff at now, like BDD.
BDD is very good mechanically. BDD is very good mechanically. People thought he sucked,
didn't he? Like, this guy was a stud, mate. If anything, his problem was a bit of a choker internationally, and he seemed to have some, like, letdown issues mentally in certain games, but there's a reason he won 1 billion fucking Player of the Game awards or whatever. Like, when he was on his champion with the right team in just a regular season match, he was a stud. Like, these guys are better players at mid lane, but Faker was a better player of League of Legends. It's the reason why I've stuck with Perks till the bitter end, because it's like everyone who's a coach in Europe says, these guys, it doesn't matter if Perks is good at laning. Perks knows how to win League of Legends games. Mickey X knows how to win League of Legends games. So when you put him on XL, magically XL wins League. Wonder can go to dogshit Fnatic and they win League of Legends games, even with no jungle synergy with the mid and the bot lane. These guys, because they got to that high level where they were just fucking operate, they just know how to win. They're not playing their role, they're playing the game and the map.
Right. And it's the same shit that you see with NFL quarterbacks. The value of Peyton Manning wasn't that he was a running threat, right? He's not trying to make plays with his athleticism. It's that he could dissect a defensive scheme, make adjustments, and just play, he's playing chess, and he just knew who was going to be open based on his experience. If you have enough experience, you do not have to have all of the mechanical abilities or athletic abilities of another player because you are 2 steps ahead of them and you are creating opportunities for yourself where you don't actually have to outplay someone because the outplay happened in the macro sense.
Bro,
right?
You remember this? When Peyton Manning was on the Broncos first, when he came back from the fusion neck surgery, his arm was a noodle. He was throwing these soft, fluttery balls that did the spiral, but they just dropped into like Demaryius Thomas's hands. And the only reason they look amazing is because he's reading the defense, he's getting him open, he's running the fakes, he's got the fit, and then essentially it's just execution. He was never doing like Tom Brady to Randy Moss 2007, like fucking 50-mile bombs that he catch. They were never doing that. But the joke is the reason he broke the offensive is because his brain was just on a higher level. It's like you're saying, he just completed the game basically.
I mean, he threw 55 touchdowns in 2013.
Like if you go and watch in the early days when he's with the Colts, mate, he's a stud. That's when he's got the rocket arm and he can throw anyone open. Like he's not trying that later in his career. That's what we're talking about with players like Faker. And the other one I always give the example is Xiao Hu's another guy where, especially on those old RNG teams, I think that's genius, some of the things he did there with those MSI wins, mate. That shouldn't, if you make like a 30 for 30 in esports, you'd make it on that. How did this guy do it? He roll swapped, he won his mid, he won with Gala when he was a rookie. He could just do anything. He could just do anything he wanted eventually because he was just on such a higher level than the other guy because the other guy was just playing mid lane.
Yep.
You know, the other guy was thinking, it's a shame into Oriana. Xiao Hu was like, right, and then later in the game, where's the pressure going to be? And what should we go for the Heralds in this game? Should we not? Like, he was on a different level. He was sadly, the cliche is overused. He was playing checkers. And, he was playing chess and they were playing checkers as the old cliche goes, right?
Yeah, and I think, too, what was so impressive about Faker's performance in this year is we say that Faker hasn't been the same player since maybe 2016 or 2017. But this was Spring Split was his best split in 6 or 7 years. And the scary thing about T1 is what happens if he's back in form in terms of individual ability and mechanical ability, and he has all of these extra intangibles from being a super veteran and a shot caller within the scene. And that is why it's pretty disappointing that T1 underperformed so heavily towards the end of playoffs and MSI, because it felt like maybe this was the best chance for them to be competitive. Because he obviously, now we know, because probably because of his injury, he hasn't been doing as well in summer, and now he's out. So we don't know if he's going to come back. They announced a 2-week hiatus for him, but if this is a serious issue, it may take much longer than 2 weeks to heal. Like, he might just be done for this year.
Here's my speculation. Are you ready for the speculation?
Yep.
From knowing Korean players and knowing the mentality over there, and especially knowing that when you're the old horse, it's like fucking Animal Farm, mate. You get sent to the glue factory. They don't just fucking let you gracefully retire. It's not Korean esports. I would speculate this is part of why Faker's been playing this style these years. If you know these injuries, Monte, they don't appear out of nowhere. You don't wake up and my wrist is broken. It gets gradually worse over time. At first, you can ignore it. You take an hour off every now and then. Then what happens is you might need a painkiller every now and then when it hurts a bit too much. Or you might need I'd look into this. Someone might start getting you acupuncture, or you might get like special things or a little glove to wear. And then eventually, because you can never have the full time off you need to, like a real sport, like in sports, if you tear your rotator cuff, you disappear for a year and completely rehab it. You can't do that in Korean esports, and you cannot do that if you want to have a esports career, because it's all about now. I would speculate it's probably built up over the years, because remember, the reason that's amazing that people like Flash and Fake It and Joe is because they also grinded harder than anyone ever in the history of the game. Normally, that can only last 3 or 4 years before you're just done. Like, either you get an injury mentally, you can't handle it mentally, or you physically get injured and you're just fucked. Like, if people don't know, that's another reason why I speculate. Say if you did the match fixing, he already was known to have like loads of wrist pain, so he could still be brilliant at the game, but he knows the more hours I put in, the more it hurts. It's like it becomes a negative feedback loop. So I would speculate this is probably something that was already coming eventually. It's just like, and also spoiler, is it a coincidence that he now steps out right when T1's looking a bit sus? They've sort of dropped off. KT and Genji are, but like, this is actually the perfect time to come out, Monte. You come out now, you've still got time to come back, make the playoffs. All you have to do is be top 4, remember? That's the best part. You don't even have to be top 3. Just be top 4. You get to go to Worlds. This is actually the most cynical take, but it's the best time to take him out.
Right. And they were already 6-2 heading into this week's match.
Yeah.
So they only need to make top 6 to actually get into the playoffs. There are, I mean, it's a good time for him to take the time off, as you say. And also, it has to be mentioned, too, that if this has been a persistent issue, he played Faker literally played the maximum amount of League of Legends that you could play last year. There is,
that stat that if you players like LeBron or Kobe, the other reason why eventually it's going to end is because you keep making the playoffs every season and going deep. Like, when you add those up, it's like you played like 5 extra seasons in your career,
Think about this, guys. He played in both LCK finals, so entire LCK splits, every possible basically playoff match, finals of MSI, World Finals. He played every single possible game of League of Legends that you could play. And that literally adds, the difference between being a team that doesn't make playoffs domestically and one that goes to both international finals is 3 months or so of competition. It is a lot. And, international travel, it is really, really rough on players, and the amount of additional time, practice, everything. It is probably, hundreds, it's probably like thousands of hours of additional play and practice. No joke. So, I mean, it can be really rough on these injuries. And that has been part of Faker's career, is that the more, over a 10-year career, he has gotten very, 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 very few breaks because he's been at so many international events. T1 has consistently been deep in these playoff runs.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.